to you, all dressed in black. He won't be coming back. Save your tears. God hears and hears the pains of 70s. Unreal, they're only dreams. Save your crying for the day. Fool, if you think it's over, 'cause you said goodbye. Fool, if you think it's over, I'll tell you why. You born eyes always cry with pain at the first look at the morning sun. Fool, if you think it's over, it's just begun. Miss Teenage Dream, such a tragic scene. He knocked your crown and ran away. First wound of pride, and how you cried, cried. Save your tears. God hears and hears. Fool, if you think it's over, 'cause you said goodbye. Fool, if you think it's over, I'll tell you why. You born eyes always cry with pain at the first look at the morning sun. Fool, if you think it's over, it's just begun. I'll buy your first good wine. We'll have a real good time. Save your crying for the day that may not come. But anyone who had to pay would laugh at you and say, fool, if you think it's over, 'cause you said goodbye. Fool, if you think it's over, I'll tell you why. I'll buy your first good wine. We'll have a real good time. Save your crying for the day. You born eyes always cry with pain at the first look at the morning sun. Fool, if you think it's over, it's just begun. You're a fool.
Good afternoon. I want to welcome you back. I know it's been a while, so we're going to stream this live, and I'm also recording it in case, first of all, in case it's removed by YouTube, and also in order to upload it faster on Odyssey, BitChute, and Rumble. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel on any of those platforms, go ahead and do it, because it is becoming more and more common for YouTube to simply erase channels and content that they find to be running against their community standards, and their community standards are getting more and more stringent regarding topics that until a few years ago were just basic elements of public debate. So today I want to discuss a few stories. The first of which is going to be a topic I don't normally focus on, but which everybody's experiencing, which is the public lockdowns that are happening across the country. And one of the issues that I want to bring up is that even if you like, you can talk about the lockdowns that are mandates by the state. Those are one problem that I think are already it's one problem that's already encroaching on the rights and freedoms of average citizens across the world. Now that's if the state or the city gets involved. And generally, if you're in one of these bluer states, which are Pennsylvania, New York, Maryland, and Massachusetts, California, and you have a Democrat governor, you usually have pretty bad restrictions and mandates. Now, some of the states I mentioned, by the way, it's not even Democrats that are doing it. One of the states, so Vermont, Massachusetts, Maryland, all of them have GOP governors, and all of those governors are essentially no different in terms of their COVID lockdown policy than any standard Democrat. And that's something that I think is important, that the media is trying to make this into a partisan issue, saying that if you are an opponent of the lockdown, you might have some sort of ideological issue, that you're some right-wing nut job or something. The reality is that you have two parties that have basically complied with these mandates that are just in every way possible infringements on the freedoms of people, the freedoms of businesses, and the freedoms of religious institutions. And I just, I've been to other states the past few months, and I was just in three other states, two other states the other week. And, the variations are very stark. If you go to New York, the stringency of the lockdown laws is, of course, pretty tough, but when you go out into the street and you see the way people are really living, it's an obvious joke. It's very, very clear that the NYPD and Cuomo and de Blasio's inspectors don't have the capacity to actually enforce the lockdowns that they're talking about on average pedestrians. So what they do is, instead, they'll go to businesses and harass them instead, because you can't just take your brick and mortar bookstore and simply open it up on a random street corner and move all your stock over there. It just isn't feasible. So the real focus of the enforcement has been not, it's almost like, if you ever watch the South Park episode where they're talking about the hookers and johns, when they were going after the customers, is the idea has always been to go after the johns and not the hookers, right? Because the idea is, oh, the customers, they're the ones who are forcing these people to walk the streets. And in this case, it's kind of the opposite, because you're saying, well, how do we prevent customers from going to stores? Well, you just shut the stores down so they won't have where to go. That is, both of those, I think, are idiotic expressions of enforcement, right? They basically go and tell people that your needs are less important than the public good, and we decide what the public good is and how it is defined. So that's the first story I want to really talk about, is just my personal observation of the lockdowns. I went to this was actually local. I probably could have made some other videos over the past few weeks and months, just like many other people have. But this week I happened to be at a local venue that has a number of stores and shops. It's actually a pretty ritzy venue over in Shaker Heights. If you know Ohio, Shaker Heights is a pretty nice area. And I just saw plain as day how the lockdowns are going to force even people who support them into the poorhouse. The other issue I want to talk about, which is the main topic, is the two House races that will probably be snatched away legally by Nancy Pelosi through a little known clause where the House can basically, there's an illusion in America that the House of Representatives is elected by the people in each of their congressional districts. And normally that's the way it happens, but there is a backdoor failsafe in case the party that is in power, or however they want to do it, if the House of Representatives as a whole decides that they do or don't want a certain person inside and they want to invalidate an election, they can just seat the people that they want based on this committee's vote and based on a full vote of the House after that committee. That's another issue I want to talk about. I want to discuss a little bit about the YouTube censorship, and then I do have to go. So other thing is I've been getting all these spam calls. So if you hear my phone go off, I'm just not going to answer it. So without further ado, so this is a video that I took from, I think it was on Monday at this place called the Van Aken Market Hall. And it is, one second. Okay, here's the right display. So it is basically, so I took this video, it is on my YouTube channel, but it's in private because it's kind of choppy and all that. So I'm just going to play it on mute. And I took a second video outside, but it never uploaded properly, so I don't have it anymore. But anyway, so I am basically going to wander around this food court. And it's not that large. It's only about 15 businesses in there. And you can see this is the sitting area, okay? There is basically sound on the real video, but you can see all of these craft beers over here, and the sitting area is just completely cordoned off. There's caution tape all over it. So this venue, the Van Aken Market Hall, was supposed to be a nice hot spot for people after work, coming back from generally coming back after their commute and having a drink or a coffee, or they have a deli over there. They have clothing stores and boutiques. They have a handmade soap shop. There's a sign that says everything's going to be all right. There's a bar behind it. So there's a type of bar in it. There's another bar right there called the Brassica. And that one, the Brassica, was the only one that had any customers inside, and it was only a handful of them. The rest of them were basically no seating. And you can see here, this is a lounge. There's no seating there. And you can keep wandering around. Here's the wines. There's nobody to take this. So they have all this stock, all these wines, all these craft beers. They have a full bar over there. There's nobody. So this is a pretty high rent venue, and there's nobody in it. Over here, this is some sort of kitchen. There's nobody over there. There's a different shop. I don't even know what the name of it was. Here's another one. And you can see this is I think this is some other type of bar over there, and this is the bar from before, the everything is going to be all right bar, but it's not all right because you can see everything's dark and there's only these tables with no patrons on them. So it's closed. There's nobody in there. Closed on now I get it, maybe a Monday night. You don't expect too many people at the bar, but there is happy hour. I believe there's happy hour at bars every day of the week. Maybe it's just Friday. I never went to happy hour, so I wouldn't know. But typically on a weekday, you want some regular patrons. You don't want to just depend on weekend traffic. And here, this is the Red Star Cafe. I actually went to one of their other branches, and they have this Black Lives Matter sign there. But I think, first of all, the Red Star Cafe, they have clearly an ideological bent. If you go to them, they have a lot of literature there. Usually it's one of those radical coffee shops. But there's nothing radical. You can have all the signs up you want. There's nothing radical. Whether you have Black Lives Matter or Mao Zedong or any other sign up talking about your politics, when you're basically complying with lockdown orders that strangle what you're trying to do. There's nothing revolutionary about that. And I would say that if you wait a few months, that these businesses are all going to be closed. So I kept walking around, commenting that, like, sometimes when I'm in public, I don't really like to discuss, when you don't know who the people you are around you, certain topics that relating to current events. In this case, first of all, it was loud enough there because of the noise. it wasn't people making noise. It was simply, the AC system and the music. So it was loud enough that I wasn't really afraid. But also, like, you can see, the only people there were the workers, and I knew I wasn't really going to get much attention from them. These boutiques over here, so they're by appointment only, if at all. Some of them have hours that are just early in the day, 5 days a week, and then there's more limited hours on the weekends. It's just unsustainable. Now this is like premium stuff. It's like leather bags and things like that. So they have all of the, again, this is like luxury items. They have all this inventory, and they're supposedly going to sell them by private appointment a couple days a week. That's not the way I think their business model was originally supposed to run. And then they can only have limited capacity. This was like the handmade soap store. It's from a local business in Lakewood, Ohio. And basically it's shuttered right now during the evening. I think they have hours in the early part of the day, but it was closed around, the late evening. I think it was around 7 p.m. I was there. So imagine, if you will, a shop being closed after 6, when people are maybe on their way back. They've traveled back from their job or whatever. I get it that some businesses, they're only open until 5 and things like that. If you walked outside, and I wish I had that video, you can see that this place is basically totally limited by the COVID restrictions, because they put up these ridiculous igloos that people can sit in outside. And they are, and maybe I can even pull them up. Let me see if they have them. So I hope that they put the images up, because I'm sure that they wanted people to come by saying, oh, don't be afraid of the COVID. We have igloos for you to sit outside. But think about the absurdity of it. You can't sit inside, which is warm and, well, obviously, the circulated air might not be that good. So you can see these igloos here. So they want you to sit out in these things. They're very thin, membranous structures. I saw one guy sitting on his computer in there, and basically typing away, clacking, and nobody else was using them. So imagine that this shopping center, they put up all of those igloos at great expense in order to have diners, and nobody's really going to use them because it's December in northern Ohio, and people don't really dine outside because it might be below freezing. It might be I mean, yes, you have shelter from precipitation, but it might be really windy and noisy and stuff like that. It was very windy the night I was there, and people are going to freeze their hands off. So it's an idiotic idea. I'm sure in the summer maybe it made a little sense. I was in New York. I was seeing a lot of temporary structures erected outside during the summer. Now they're going to have to build them up, and people are making jokes that these temporary structures, or these outdoor dining, mock-ups are basically turning into indoor dining. They're turning into structures, and it's just absurd. And that's what I wanted to talk about. That it's in Ohio, we don't have the most strict lockdown, but it is getting a little bit more. We have a curfew. The curfew is very weakly enforced. I haven't seen that much news about people being arrested here for violating various aspects of the lockdown, but I'm sure something's going to come eventually, because we do have a lot of we have a lot of strange people living in Ohio. So things could happen, but the fact is that this is a measure that's been enacted largely at the behest of, first of all, the people living in the community, the people of Shaker Heights. I think the local municipalities might have a hand in it, and the businesses themselves. They want to tell patrons that, yeah, you can come in here, and we want you to come in here and safely shop. And all the measures are taken with the best of intentions, hoping to have people spend their time browsing and buying things. And it's already hard enough without any pandemic for brick and mortar businesses to survive. But imagine you have people who come in during a pandemic, they look at your stuff, and they're still browsing on Amazon. Meanwhile, you have no other traffic coming in. You have maybe reduced traffic, maybe 15% of the traffic that you normally have. And do you expect people to continue to pay rent to these different these different commercial districts in order to keep a business afloat there when you're just literally being shackled to these reduced capacities? You can't make a business model succeed that way. And that's really where the lockdown, I feel, is starting to get it. It's really starting to bite, right? You have most of these businesses are actually not that large. They're either there's a couple chain stores there, but that's it. The majority are small local businesses, and they're going to probably go belly up in the near future if they aren't already thinking about ways to close up and liquidate their inventory, and maybe or they're cutting staff and things like that. Why would you need to have more than one person manning the cafe, if the Rising Star Cafe, with their radical politics? Like, so let's say originally they wanted to have 2 baristas or whatever. Now, why would you need 2 baristas if you don't have you might not even have 5 customers an entire hour, right? The place was just deserted, and it is sad. You don't have to agree with the way these people feel. Shaker Heights is a very heavily liberal part of the city. It's probably the most liberal. You see these people living on these posh mansions and having Joe and Kamala signs all over their yards and things like that. So obviously, I don't really feel that these are people that, they're not kindred spirits of mine, and probably not of most of the people that I hang out with. But they have to start to understand soon that these lockdowns are killing every single undertaking that they've been dreaming of improving their community for years. Now, Shaker Heights has never been a dump. It's probably been one of the better communities in the state of Ohio. I'm saying the entire state, not just the Cleveland area or the county. Or it's probably been, Shaker Heights has been one of the better cities in the state for decades, for maybe even a century. I was just reading about some of the history, and you can see some of these mansions from the robber baron era in Shaker Heights. You can drive along streets and you can see mansions that might have 9 or 10 bedrooms on them, and those people have to understand that what they're doing now is going to crater the few people in their community who have to, they have to make money in order to build a better life, right? Some of these people, they don't have to worry about that. They have secured their income through their parents, or through, maybe they have some sort of very successful business or something. Whatever the case, if you own property in Shaker Heights, you're probably not in desperate need of an income, especially if you own in some of the parts of it. There are some like very regular. My mom actually used to live there very briefly when I was a kid as a tenant. So there's some very common areas, for lack of a better word, apartments and rental houses and things like that. But the majority of the city is some of these, well-to-do people. Well, not just well-to-do, but people with generational wealth, people going back maybe 3 or 4 generations of wealth. And they send their kids to, the prep schools and Catholic schools generally. And I think that is going to be a rude awakening when the Van Aken district has to basically see some of these businesses close their doors after only recently opening. So I'm sure, and this is something I want to talk about, those of you that watch this video, whether it's on BitChute, whether it's on Odyssey or Rumble, or whether it's still on YouTube when the other videos come up. I think you should send me, if you have my email. In fact, I'll just put the email in the chat. Just send me photos or videos of local areas that you patronize, and that you can see that they're struggling. And visible signs of struggle are not hard. You can see that they have reduced hours. You can see that they may have less staff. You can see it. You can maybe have testimonials from people when I was there. That it didn't seem like there were many people to have testimonials from, because there were no customers. There were people that were dining there, but it seemed like it would be a little bit rude to go in the middle and like tell, oh, and plus I was in a little bit of a rush. But I think it's really important to understand the cost, the cost of of really, people talk about the term cost of living. This is the cost of not living, of basically staying at home and listening to these clown doctors, people like Dr. Fauci, who can't keep their story straight and just tell you what not to do because they think that you're putting the world at risk for, going outside and having a barbecue or any other mundane activity, walking one of your pets, likely your dog, but let's say you're walking your iguana somewhere, or you take your parakeet for a little flight in the park because you don't want him anymore. In any case, so you know that the things that you're doing, it doesn't make any sense why this guy who's always on TV and he seems to love the limelight, this guy who supposedly is this paragon of science, he's telling you, oh, you shouldn't go and have Thanksgiving dinner. You shouldn't go and have like a draft beer at the bar because you're putting others in danger. Look, every person who goes outside, you take your life into your own hands. You don't know what's going on out there. This is an open system. There could be anything going on out there. So this whole notion that you're threatening the world by going outside and, you know, gardening or something is it's fallacious, and it's an insult to the intelligence of any viewer or reader, right? And I have relatives who are complying with every letter of these lockdown orders, and they have completely changed. Their personality has changed. They've become basically like mouse people, right? They don't have any of the real, zest to their life that maybe you used to see from them. Some of them were always bland and boring, but you get the idea. So the lockdowns, I feel, if you're a person who is at risk, if you're a person or if one of your relatives is at risk, I don't think people need to make an excuse for why they decide not to go outside and do something. That's really your choice, and you can decide which risks and dangers you want to take. Just like those people who might say, well, I don't add sugar to what I'm eating. I want to watch my sugar. I'm going to put in maybe an artificial sweetener. Of course, there's risks to that. So you weigh those risks as a person, as an independent person, and then you decide which contingency is more safe for you, or or whether you just want to disregard the risks and keep going forward. Remember, our stores in most states, in fact, I don't even know if there's a state that outlaws this. You can still buy cigarettes and tobacco, chewing tobacco, which causes mouth cancer. You can buy all those products, which when I was a kid, they were talking about smoking is the scourge of the public health. Well, guess what? They never ended up banning smoking. What did they end up doing? They ended up taxing it more because the people who disproportionately have remained smokers are low-income people, right? So you find ways to take something which is dangerous and make money on it. Other activities that they do the same thing with are gambling, right? They say gambling is it's a vice that will tear families apart. But we now have gambling in the state, and thank God. I think gambling is fine. I think if you're somebody who enjoys placing bets on games, as long as you're not, living beyond your means. If you want to gamble, if you want to take the money that you own for whatever reason and play a game of roulette or something, or if you want to place a bet on an MMA fight. So the state of Ohio, generally we've allowed gambling in certain forms. Obviously, there's a lottery, and we have a casino. We have 3 casinos, I think, in the area. In just my area, there's other casinos, I think, downstate. So this notion that the state and the city and and all these other bodies, that they're out there to prevent you from taking unnecessary risks that could end your life and end the life of people around you, is I feel ridiculous. Yeah, gambling is not going to be, if you place bets, it doesn't mean that the person next to you is at risk. But there's always, they have vehicles on the road that aren't necessarily the safest, right? They have to abide by all of these different regulations, but the people driving them can't be regulated, right? They can be regulated in terms of the laws, but they can't be regulated in terms of their behavior. There's plenty of people who go out and they drive, and they might even have their license revoked, or they have vision problems, or they might have different issues. The state can try to limit it, but ultimately the decision of who's driving and when is up to the person who has the keys, right? Eventually, yeah, I think they might end up imposing mandates where the person driving is tied to some sort of metric that's controlled by the BMV or something. That's really something that I think is not far away in terms of the government deciding things for you. Swede Speaks, welcome. Haven't seen you. I think I met him 3 years ago. Met him actually here. He was on a visit through here with with some people. I don't know if he wants me to mention who, but we actually met and had a discussion. So I hope you're doing well. I know that you were in Europe for a while. Was it Estonia or something? So glad to hear from you again. And by the way, subscribe to his channel. I know that he has a channel on YouTube, but you can probably find him elsewhere as well. So yeah, so I did meet him with his then fiance over in on the west side, and we did a video. I think it was shortly around the time when I was doing stuff relating to John Mattis. So, and of course, I think he's also a follower of Anthony Brian Logan, who published this article that I wrote. That's a good segue, and it is called "Nancy Pelosi May Legally Steal 2 House Seats Thanks to an Unbelievable Contingency." So this is a story that Dan Bongino actually commented on it earlier, and you can actually, I put all the links in here. But for those of you that are following the elections, I want to combine it with the other topic, which is the YouTube censorship. From now on, right, this is why I'm recording the video. I'm not just live streaming, because in case the live stream goes down, and if you see the live stream going down, just don't ask why. I am going to continue recording it and then upload later to BitChute and Parler and Rumble. No, BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey. So don't worry if you can't find it. But in any case, if you're going to be making videos that call into question the results of the 2020 presidential election, then you can now be banned by YouTube. That's how ridiculous it has become. This is per a number of sources that are, and through YouTube itself, they've announced this change of terms, and it basically signals the marriage between the unholy matrimony between big tech and the media and the political establishment, right? Because in 2000, it was very common for the media to question the results. In 2016, it became even more common. Gradually, the media has decided that the things that they think are their responsibility, which are to frame the news as they see fit according to their interests and according to their worldview, they're not things that are open to anyone, right? They think that they have the exclusive right to all of those things. So, whereas until now we were told, yeah, you can have free speech, you can talk about things that are common in a democratic society, such as the results of an election, question things, question the legality of certain things, talk about the evidence of such legality and things like that. Now you have to basically pretend as if the reality that they're presenting to you through their approved vendors, I will call them, people like Bloomberg and Fox News and who's another one, and MSNBC, CBS. They think that that is the way that YouTube has to go. And they think that that is the future of YouTube. And therefore, they believe that it is, they're going to curate the way that the news is reported, regardless of what's happening. And that's what's so eerie about this, that we're in the middle of a major court case, right? The Trump campaign is bringing a major court case. One of them is actually, I believe it's been docketed with the U.S. Supreme Court. That's the one that the state of Texas has joined in on. There also are other ones that are making it to the Supreme Court. The media will say in many cases that the cases are being dismissed, but you shouldn't just take that at face value. In some cases, you're having just these motions for preliminary injunctions dismissed, meaning that when, for example, in the Sean Parnell case, which was just supposedly dismissed by the U.S. Supreme Court, Sean Parnell wanted an injunction that would hold that the Pennsylvania elections were invalid pending the decision on his case. And the court said unanimously, no, we're not going to grant you a preliminary injunction. That's it. So they haven't ruled on the merits of the case. They've basically just ruled that he has to prove, him and the other co-plaintiffs, I think, I forget, I think the other guy's name was maybe Mike Kelly. But the gist of it is that they maintain that the procedure for absentee ballots was illegal, the way that the Pennsylvania state, the Pennsylvania Secretary of State's office or Secretary of the Commonwealth, the way they conducted the election. So they believe it was unlawful, and they're trying to have the election basically invalidated for that purpose in order to prevent those votes from being, they're trying to prevent the election from being certified, and therefore the results to be recognized, and those people elected under those results to be seated in their offices. And that's what the injunction was about. Now they will likely have to argue their case before the court, and if they cannot prove their case, then yeah, you're going to just see the results of the election as stated by the media and as stated by the Secretary of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Kathy Boekver. You're just gonna see it hold up. And what's the problem? So if the media is so confident that these cases are gonna go nowhere, and that they're not only are they dismissed, but they're gonna be double dismissed, which is the ridiculous term that I'm gonna be using for, they didn't dismiss the case, they dismissed the request for a preliminary injunction pending the case, right? So these are things that they know that most of us have never been to law school. They know that most of us are very civically ignorant. And they know that most of us don't have the time to research what's actually going on. So they just give a very, not only simplified, but erroneous coverage of what's actually happening. And they expect you to just swallow it. So that's basically what I think is the real issue here. And meanwhile, while all that is going on, so you have 79 electoral votes potentially in the balance. Donald Trump needs to remove, actually I think it's 37 votes. I wrote here 36, but he needs 37 of them to be removed in order for Biden's total to sink below 270, and therefore the election will no longer be, the electoral college will no longer have a candidate with a majority, and that will throw the election to the House of Representatives delegations. So you have all those suits pending. Meanwhile, so while the Democrats are saying, well, he's trying to undermine the legitimacy of the election, he's trying to do all of these shenanigans in order to get the state legislatures not to recognize the results. He's trying to cast doubt on it. He's trying to do everything that he does is 100% evil. There's no way that they can see any sort of justification for it, even though everything he's doing is legal. Everything he's doing is definitely within his rights as a candidate in the 2020 election. While all that's happening, the Democrats have a real problem on their hands that's a little bit peripheral to what's going on with Donald Trump, and that is their poor showing in the U.S. House elections. The U.S. House, It has 435 members, and in order to get a majority, you need, I believe, 218 members just to get a majority, right? And at the moment, the Democrats are sitting at 222, so they have their majority. There's no problem with them getting a majority and having whoever they want to be the Speaker of the House. The problem is that if you have a very weak majority, I think I may have mentioned this in one of the last 2 or 3 videos, but if you have a weak majority, meaning one that's maybe less than 10 or less than 15, now you have to depend on during a House vote, and a committee vote, by the way, you have to depend on as many people being there in order to represent the Democrats as possible. So what does that mean? Okay, if you watch some of these hearings where they're interviewing witnesses in Congress, generally they allot a specific amount of time to each congressperson. So you can have that person, maybe drop by and ask their questions and leave. However, if they're undergoing some sort of process where they end up having to vote on a piece of legislation that is before the committee that will then go to the full House, you want those people there in order to vote on it, and they have to be present. So, or at least they have to be. I think right now, due to COVID, they might be doing video links to do the votes, but you still need people present in order to have the process go forward. You can't have people, render their vote to completely absent, meaning that they will, I guess mail it in, or they might, they might use some other conduit in order to deliver their vote. They have to do it either in person or now they can do it by video, but they have to be present in one form or another. And the way that it could end up being is that the Democrats, with their thin majority, they might have problems getting bills out of committee. They might have problems not only because of that, but because some of these centrist Democrats, people who live in rural areas, people who are in some of the more swing districts, they might start to say, and these are people in Michigan and Pennsylvania that, in my opinion, due to the irregularities that have happened, it's questionable whether they should even have been reelected, right? I'm trying to be careful with how I'm saying it. There are some people who, due to the way that this election was conducted, may not deserve to be in Congress. So therefore, they know that, due to the closeness of the knife this time, they might want to, maybe vote against the Democratic majority sometimes. So it's going to be very difficult for Nancy Pelosi or whoever ends up leading the Democrats, because it could be that she gets basically pushed out very soon because of the way things are going. It could be that they don't have a workable majority, meaning that for the next 2 years, the House of Representatives is basically a lame duck session, right? You have the Democrats putting forth bills that not even the Democrats as a whole support. And that would be essentially the death of her legacy, right? Because Nancy Pelosi, she's constantly raising money. She's telling people we need this money in order to elect people so that the House remains Democratic, so that we can push through all of these different things like in some cases she'll say, yeah, we're going to revamp Obamacare. She might say that we're going to pass common sense gun control. She might say all of these different things. And what's it going to be if the House, as currently composed, is seated? It's going to be a dream. It's going to be basically some sort of, that she's going to be completely up the creek with no paddle, because she's not going to have a workable majority, but she's still the speaker. So she's going to be sitting there as the leader of the most ineffective House in the history of the body, right? So in order to preserve at least that small token of authority that she really clings to, and at her age, you wonder really why she bothers, right? What is Nancy Pelosi really accomplishing as a member of Congress and as Speaker of the House? She's in her 80s. She's been, this is to Democrats, according to Democratic progressives and people like that, they consider her to be very ineffective and very duplicitous. So what's she really accomplishing? Well, as Speaker of the House, she can put forward bills that are bipartisan. And guess who probably benefits the most from bills that have bipartisan support? Well, industrial lobbyists and lobbyists for various special interests that whether it's logging companies in whatever case. I'm just saying for the sake of argument, a logging company, or maybe a credit card company. Maybe you're talking about Planned Parenthood. Those areas where the two parties are able to agree and able to do bipartisan support, those aren't necessarily in line with the people's agenda, or the agenda of the people who voted for that individual member of Congress. So if you live in a district in Illinois, for example, where you elected a congressman on the supposition that he would vote very liberally because you're very liberal, and then they end up voting for all these loopholes in the tax code for companies that you don't agree with, yes, that would be what you would call a betrayal of your ideals by the person that you trusted. And that's why many Democrats, I think, have become disenchanted with the Democratic Party, because they are liberal, or progressive, whatever the hell you want to call it, and they want to regulate companies. They want to see fewer foreign wars. But then they elect these people, and what do? They turn around and they stab in the back. Same thing happens on the Republican side. Sometimes you'll see these Republicans caving on gun control, caving on abortion, caving on big tech, caving on all these issues. So you see this. This is why there's a populist opposition in the United States. This is why people are losing confidence in the system as a whole. And this is why I think that we're basically seeing the political system, as we've grown up with it, start to crack, because people know that you have a Speaker of the House who is beholden to the interests of the donors, not the interests of the people who elected the representatives that she's speaking for. Right, and I'm talking about people on both sides of the aisle. People are widely conscious of the fact that this is the way it is, and there's nothing they can do about it. Now, one of the problems that she has is that, she can probably get along with the Republicans on bipartisan issues, things like authorizing defense bills, which they've definitely supported. The Democrats are now, apparently, if you watch Jimmy Dore, they're supporting defense spending even more than Republicans are, which is shocking. If you grew up when I grew up, it was the exact opposite. But now she's also lost districts in very key areas. She's lost districts in western Minnesota, a district that was blue for a very long time. It was occupied by a blue dog Democrat, Colin Peterson. That's now gone. It's fallen to a GOP person. They've lost some seats in Orange County, California. These are ones that they gained in 2018, and they lost a seat in Staten Island. And all told, they've lost plenty of seats, and the GOP has picked them up, and it's narrowed. And there's 2 more seats that are under dispute. Those would be in New York, in Utica. They include the New York 22nd District, where the GOP candidate Claudia Tenney, who used to be in Congress, she's leading by 12 votes according to the latest recount. And in Iowa, there's Marionette Miller Meeks, also from the GOP, leading her Democratic opponent, Rita Hart, by only 6 votes. So basically, what we're seeing right now is this. This could go, first of all, to the courts, but it might not go to the courts, and I'll explain why. Both of these people, Anthony Brindisi and Marionette Miller Meeks, they could go to the court and say, hey, we want you to look into these results and maybe overturn the election. Or apparently there's a different way. So Anthony Brindisi is saying that he's going to try to settle this through the court. Okay? However, in Iowa, Rita Hart is saying, well, I'm not even going to bother doing that. I'm going to try to be seated by what? By the House Administration Committee. And this is something that people don't really know about. The House Administration Committee, which is just like all the other committees in the House, is charged with a number of the protocols relating to how the actual how work actually gets done in the House of Representatives, right? And it's like basically deciding on some of those issues. And one of those issues is whether to seat a person or not. So generally you think, okay, if somebody is running for election at a House seat, let's say it's in South Carolina, and they win the race and their opponent concedes, so therefore they get seated, right? The House Administration Committee apparently has the power, and this is a power that they have. Even they don't even have to abide by what the Supreme Court says or any other court. They can say no. They can say, well, we don't see this election that happened to this House seat as being legitimate or lawful. We're just going to vote to seat the other person or to not seat anyone. I think that they can do. So basically, let's review that. If you are a member of the House on this committee, or if you are this committee, you can basically say that not only do the voters not matter and the result of the vote not matter, okay? And obviously this is most applicable when there's a very narrow result, but it doesn't have to be necessarily. There's nothing that says lawfully that they can't expand that to any old House race. So they can say that, look, we know that this election was not acceptable. Therefore, it doesn't matter what the voters say. It doesn't matter if there was litigation in court that sustains what the results say. We are going to choose to seat the other person. And that's basically what this article is about. It's about how the Democrats, they're the same people who constantly harp on the fact that the Electoral College is a vestige of racism. They say that the Senate is disproportionately weighted for lower populated states. Like they can understand that the state of Oklahoma has 2 seats and so does the state of California. They feel it should be exactly like the House. Everything should be allotted based on population. And that's why they are all the time talking about, oh, we need to change the Constitution. We need to make it really a popular democracy and all of that. And they oppose voter ID laws because they say that it leads to voter suppression disproportionately in minority areas, even though there's no evidence to support that anymore. Ever since the Civil Rights Act, it's been not a problem at all to register minority voters. Generally, they have no problem voting. And in many cases, when there are long queues at the lines, at the polling places, long queues at the polling places, generally those are districts that are run by who? By Democrats. Places like Houston, they were showing footage of these lines that were stretching around blocks during the primary, I think. And the truth is that Houston is not run by the Texas Secretary of State. It's run by the Houston, or I think it's the Harris County Board of Elections. So it's all a bunch of talk in that case. But in this case, what's happening in Iowa, what could happen in New York, even though in New York, to be fair, Anthony Brindisi is going through the courts. But in either case, if the person that Nancy Pelosi doesn't like ends up winning, as Marionette Miller Meeks did win in Iowa, according to all the recounts and all of the different normal contingencies, she can still say to her committee members, or those committee members could make up their mind on their own, that regardless of the results of the election, they're going to seat whoever they want, and the voters be damned and the courts be damned. So with that being said, I just want to review the 4 topics that we were talking about. The YouTube censorship, everything I just talked about could end up getting this video deleted. That's why it's absolutely critical that you subscribe to me on Rumble, subscribe to me on, even more important, on BitChute and on Odyssey. Those are the most important things in terms of that. The lockdowns, I want you to try and send me maybe some video or photographs or any other maybe some news stories about how the lockdown, specifically the lockdowns, have affected people in your community, whether it's businesses, whether maybe it's children that that are having mood disorders because of it. So that's as far as the lockdown. And then finally, the 2 House seats. Yeah, we're talking about literally a usurpation of democracy by the House that's fully legal. I'm not even alleging that what they're doing is illegal, right? I am saying that this is completely legal, but it does go to refuting their position that they stand up for democracy and everyone else is some sort of tyrant who wants to impose fascism. Ironically, this is more fascistic, what they're doing. So that's about it. Please like, share, and subscribe. You can also find me on all of the other social media. You can see it right here. And I will talk to you later.